A Cybertruck at a discount. The Cadillac Lyriq is surprisingly good. And then many electric vehicles and other expensive vehicles piling up on dealer lots unsold, not just in California. That and more we discuss today. If you've been following the show as of late, you know I've recently been in 2 cities in Texas, both coasts of Florida, and of course Arizona, then back to California. And I've seen some, let's call them trends in the real car world, what's going on in the market, what people are driving, that you and I need to discuss. Let's start with the one that is the most obvious that a lot of people have been discussing over the past couple of months, and that is the Cybertruck. First, there was many years of, oh my God, we're going to have this thing that looks like a triangle. People hated it. Some people liked it. I can respect the very unique design, even though I don't think it's beautiful. Let's call it classically handsome. Actually, not so classically handsome. But the vehicle came out, and it started getting into the hands of buyers. Now, you guys know I am very good friends with all of the folks at TFL. They had an order from years ago. But their order number, if you drill down, it was something like 87,985. Basically, we all expected that they were going to get a car sometime in 2037 if they were lucky. Well, Roman, he got a call, I want to say a month ago or something like that, and they said, hey, come pick up your truck. It's not only built, it's already here in Colorado. So Roman being Roman, he had to go and take his iced tea budget and crack it open and write a check for this vehicle and pick it up. And you've seen the videos they've done, they've off-roaded it, they've done trailer, all that kind of crap. But the point is, they got the car much earlier than expected. So that was a huge data point that came in from the market of Cybertrucks. Then I'm in, where was I? Florida. I was in Naples, Florida. And then I went to Scottsdale, Arizona. And then I came back here. And in every place, Mercedes dealerships, I think it was an Audi dealership in one place, and then there was a GM dealership. There is a Cybertruck on the forecourt of franchised car dealerships that are available for sale used. I don't know about you, but that's a very quick turnaround. You guys know I'm a freak about Porsches. When new Porsches come out, yeah, they turn up on a used car forecourt, but they turn up in a year because people want to have fun with them. Or maybe even like crazy expensive AMGs or BMWs. We're starting to see M5 CSs on the forecourt of a BMW dealership. But like I've seen one, and that is it. Here we're talking about a month from when Roman, who had an early order, I've seen probably about 10 on offer at franchise car dealerships. Okay, so this might be considered cocktail party conversation for car guys, but why am I bringing this up to you? Why is this important? Well, it's telling us what the market of a highly anticipated electric vehicle is. There was a huge amount of demand. There were a crazy amount of real orders. I know a lot of people who were against Tesla and against the Cybertruck, like, oh, no one's gonna buy them. They're like super uncommitted orders. There were people that were serious and went in and bought those things. A lot, probably more than there was supply at first. But then it looks like a lot of those people did drop out, not as much as everybody anticipated, the Tesla haters, but there was enough people that went in and bought them, but they decided, okay, this is interesting, but I don't think I want to stay in this thing. Maybe it's too big, maybe they don't understand the whole thing about the drive-by-wire, maybe they don't like the design, maybe they don't feel it's finished enough. That's the big thing for me. I think it's a unique design. I don't think it's pretty, but we're going to look back on it and say it was an inflection point for design and will be one of the reasons why the vehicle will be successful. That's kind of what I'm predicting here. But you look at the details, it's very unfinished. More than the Model S was back in 2012 when it came out. There are bits that they feel there are edges that they need to round. It's almost like you can hurt yourself on that vehicle. Some of the bits, like the wheels, don't look cohesive with the design of the vehicle. And if I'm reading the tea leaves here, I feel you put all of those things together, plus there's just the kind of people that buy expensive cars, they want to be the first ones to have them, and then they move on to another one because they have to go to the Hamptons in a different vehicle. It's probably a very small percentage of those people. But overall, I think a lot of people were, let's try it, I want to be the first adopter, but the initial impression after they wrote the check wasn't as exciting as the Model S, And as such, there are more that are going to be on the market in the short term and probably in the medium term as the market starts to warm up to this vehicle. Now let's switch gears. Let's discuss something a bit more mainstream, still electric, still American, the Cadillac Lyriq. You may remember we had a discussion with the chief engineer of this vehicle. Complete badass, but not for the usual reasons. You guys may have seen episodes where we talk about the Ultium platform. We've spoken to engineers, we've spoken to designers, we've spoken to the people running General Motors, and no one can describe to us what the hell this thing is until we met her. She said, it's simply a way of packaging the battery. We look at the different vehicle and say, do we want the cells to go this way, like toast, or this way, like pancakes? And the idea is, let's take advantage of the packaging of the vehicle so we can have the right size battery in the right size vehicle. So in this case, this is a large vehicle. I didn't realize it until I drove the vehicle. You think it's like a mid-size crossover. I would argue it's closer to a large vehicle because of how long it is and how big it feels. It is crazy heavy, and one of the giveaways, look at the wheels next time you see one in person. Look at how many lug nuts are on that, and that tells you the opposite direction of the 4 lug nuts on a current generation Miata. Now, one of the things that I found fascinating about this packaging in that vehicle was she told us that she put the batteries, like toast, up and down so she could have more cells and more energy to carry around because the thing's going to need a better range even though it's so heavy. So what she did was, how do we still have headroom? Well, what we do is we make the sunroof standard. Now, granted, one can have an opening sunroof for extra money. It's $1,600 extra, but they all come with a glass roof, and that's not because they're being nice to you. They're doing that to give you more packaging space inside of an otherwise tight cabin. And now, spending probably a couple hundred miles in the vehicle, I found it to be useful for someone that is 6 foot, didn't expect that with the whole toast analogy of the battery. Now, this is not why the Lyriq is important and why I wanted to discuss it with you. I personally, from the front 3/4, it's attractive. I like the design language of where they're going and some of the light signature. Cadillac, for a long time now, since David Leone showed us the light signature of the last generation Escalade, we're talking about 2015, they have been on point with their light signatures, and they're still, I would say, at the front of the pack, especially with this car. Rear 3/4, I'm not with you on no window between the C and D pillar. I get what they're doing to make it stand out. It looks different. You go into a parking lot, into a sea of SUVs and crossovers, this car stands out, but that's not necessarily a good thing from the RSN, and now they're doing it at a $300,000 level with the Celestiq. I think it really falls down there. Here, at least, it kind of works because they're giving you that coupe look. So overall, it's got presence to it. But the thing that stands out, it's the build quality of it. I can't believe I'm saying this about a General Motors vehicle, but the detailing they put into it, everything from the tactile feel, like the vents, the knobs they use on the vents are almost as good as a Bentley. They're not quite to that level. You still feel the GM-ness in them, but it's better than anything else for, what is it, $58,990. Then you start touching all the tactile feel on the inside. This is the kind of stuff I was blown away with on the vehicle. The top of the dash is nice. The top of the door panels are nice. All the switchgear not shared with other GM brands, and that's something that the chief engineer told us. I didn't really believe her until I actually saw the vehicle. It does make a difference. However, I was all excited about it until realizing A, how much it weighs, how big it is, and it's kind of inefficient in some of those areas. But the car that I was driving, $85,000. I was impressed with this vehicle when we first spoke to that engineer, and she was telling us it's going to be a $60,000 vehicle. She said it's going to be an all-wheel drive vehicle, which we now know is $3,500 more. But overall, this is a really good effort. But I know this is going to sound ridiculous. It's such a great effort. I think GM should be doing these kind of detailing bits and tactile feel bits in gasoline cars to grow their market share in gasoline cars, and then let the market do what the market does in infrastructure and how we create energy and how we deal with batteries that maybe don't use as many minerals in the future. Let that sort itself out. You be a car company and take the amazing work that the team did with the Lyriq and do it with other General Motors vehicles that maybe have a hybrid or plug-in hybrid, but I am just one man in this area. Okay, now let's switch gears again, continue in the theme of electric vehicles, but let's talk about where the rubber meets the road, meaning, are they selling? You hear a lot in the news about the EV market has stalled, people aren't buying them, they can't afford them. In many members-only episodes, I told you when I've argued with Roman, I've argued with Nathan, and then agreed, obviously, with the folks at Savage Geese, because they're both cheapskates like me, that people can't afford a $50,000 family car. People can afford a $30,000 family car. That's why the Toyota Camry has met rave reviews. It is great to drive. One can have one with all-wheel drive and put a family in it, and it basically does the job without the additional insurance and maintenance of an SUV or a crossover. But this trip, this 3.5-week trip that I did from Texas, actually it was a full month, Texas, both sides of Florida, all around Arizona and back here, what I saw, it kind of stuck out in my brain. Any car dealership you went to, specifically General Motors and Ford dealerships, there were acres and acres and acres of their new electric vehicles unsold on their lot. So if you remember, it was the Blazer EV that met with a stop sale when it first came out. Then they finally got the Equinox EV to the market. I only see a couple of those at this point. The Hummer EV, the SUV now, even those I'm seeing on dealer lots. Fords, they've had tons of F-150 Lightnings and the Mustang Mach-E's on the market and for sale for a very long time. Like, for example, the Ford dealership that sits in front of the airport I'm based at, they, for the longest time, 2 years, they had no inventory whatsoever, where they had to play this game of like origami, taking used vehicles and even employee vehicles and spacing them out in the parking lot to look like they had cars in stock when they didn't. Now that same lot is full of Mach-E's as well as Ford F-150 Lightnings. Now the Cadillac Lyriq, that's a bit of a different kettle of fish, and I'll tell you why. All of the data points that I share with you on the show, whether it be the car reviews, members only, or inside the MotoMan studio, a lot of that I cull from reading the news like business publications, as well as my relationships with the different car manufacturers. But I also have relationships with folks that own car dealerships, as well as just normal folks that are waiting to buy these cars, some enthusiasts. Like an example would be Tom Volk. You guys know this guy, driven car reviews, great dude, and the original owner of an NA Miata. That's why I love him. But he was trying to buy a Lyriq. He's a freak about electric cars. I've tried to twist his arm to get him to a 911. He will not budge on this, but you know, different strokes for different folks. Anyway, he really wanted the Cadillac Lyriq. He was one of the first ones to put an order in, and what happened with the Lyriq, there was a lot of supply problems. It wasn't that people weren't buying it, there was a lot of orders because what? 59 grand for a Cadillac that looked different, whether you liked it or not, you really can't beat that. It's about the price of a very fully loaded Hyundai Ioniq 5. So that's kind of the proposition that Cadillac was putting out there, even before people drove it. Now, Tom is a bit of a different fellow because he had early access to the vehicle to drive a pre-production prototype, so he knew this was the car he wanted. He waited. He waited, he waited. They couldn't get the cars out of I think it's Spring Hill, Tennessee, that they make these things where they used to make the Saturns. And at the end of the day, it took over a year before the dealer called him and said, your build is now going into production. And at that point he said, I'm no longer interested because there's other vehicles that he's seriously considering, including the Porsche Macan. And I feel that's happened with a lot of people. Now this is where we switch to another data point. I have a very good friend that I've known for a couple of years now. He's big into sports and cars. And this man, he doesn't really collect cars, he collects car dealerships. I wish I had this man's problems. And one of the dealerships he owns is a Cadillac dealership. And he gave me kind of on the ground real world data. They weren't getting any cars. They had crazy amounts of orders they couldn't fill for over a year. Now they're getting cars. People aren't falling off the order books like the Tesla. So this is a different scenario. People are actually following through on their orders. Tom is the exception, not the rule, and people are getting them into the market. Granted, I don't see him on the road at all. As a matter of fact, the car that I was driving, I had never seen that color before. It was like matter of fact, it's the red tin coat you see in Cadillac for many years. They call it something different now. Stunning color, especially with some of the black trim. I normally don't like black wheels, but it looked great on this. The ones I normally see or the gray or the silver, which is a terrible color combination. But put that aside, they're getting in the market now. and they're starting to catch up. And as such, you don't see them on the used market yet, like I'm seeing some of the Hummers, like I'm seeing the Teslas, or let's switch gears, let's get out of domestics altogether. Mercedes, you guys know I love me AMGs, I love me Mercedes, love some of the folks that design, engineer, and build Mercedes. But we all know that their first foray into serial production electric vehicles was checkered at best, and the big reason was the design. The design, it didn't stand out. It was a blob on wheels, didn't take advantage of some of the packaging benefits of electric vehicles. It had the whole screen that had no reinforcing that this is a luxury vehicle. They're changing that. They're doing a mid-cycle refresh of the EQS that will have a stand-up grille and a hood ornament, and they're putting the knobs in the dash. So they're actually listening to everything you and I have told them. And this is in advance of a totally new crop of electric vehicles. I can't confirm this yet, I'd have to kill you, but expect better than 800-volt architecture in the charging. Expect them to leapfrog the competition. I think BMW has done everything right, and that's why you're not seeing a lot of them in the used market. The i4, the new i5, they're selling. I see them out there immediately, unlike the Cadillac. And here's what's important about this. They're not only able to meet supply, they're able to balance supply and demand. Because what we're learning about the electric car market, whether you like it or not, whether you're into the whole idea of moving to electric or not, you can't rush it. You can't be like the government and forcing a foot up someone's ass and saying, you got to buy an electric car when you can't afford it. So what BMW has done, they've looked at it in two areas. They said, okay, we're going to make a car first. A BMW, or we saw with the Rolls-Royce, or we saw with the Mini. They stick to their brand principles and then just change the propulsion system. But most importantly, they're not forcing the volume on them. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, they know people can't afford, I'll make it up, a $75,000 3 Series with a fastback, so there's going to be a smaller market. So very smartly, they've right-sized their supply. The second thing, and I think this is more important, they do business with providers of minerals that are not providing mineral rights from rogue nations. So translated, they're getting their minerals from places that we aren't giving up national security to get the minerals. So this is more than just meeting market demand. This is more than trying to make money on electric cars. I would argue this is one of the big steps in making electric a real business going forward. Now we'll discuss that in a completely different episode, but that's one of the constraints that BMW has as opposed to some of the other manufacturers or supplier of batteries where they do get them from places where you do have to negotiate with rogue nations. But I'm going off on a tangent. So what's the big lesson here? Not just for us, but for the car manufacturers in taking a macro look at the EV market, say in 2024. Number one, if your name is not Tesla, you cannot get away with putting an alpha product on the market, meaning unproven, untested. It needs to be a product like many cars have come before out of Detroit, out of Japan, out of Germany. They need to work. People aren't really willing to put up with crap, maybe over-the-air updates for infotainment. That is about it. When you have stop sales, that's going to cause troubles in terms of your future midterm product, and that's one of the big reasons we're seeing a lot of these vehicles sitting on lots. Now, yes, we're also seeing that's a saturation of the market. The Hyundai Ioniq 5, you guys know I love that vehicle. Ioniq 6, great vehicle. I'm the only person that likes its design. But at 50 grand, that's kind of the transaction price, people are no longer buying them. And as such, just like the Mercedes, just like the Fords, they get a ton of incentive money on them, and that's why they're sitting on the market. I don't think this is a good thing to have because, yeah, you could say, oh, that's great for me, I can get a deal on an electric car. You're not going to get the deal where you're going to have that $30,000 Camry. You can't beat that car. At the end of the day, I've told you many times, let's look at what the goalposts are. If we're trying to reduce emissions, everybody is going to agree on clean air, but there's a way to do it where you're not keel-hauling the whole system. And what we're seeing are the first market reality signs of what happens when you have government intervention into the marketplace. You're going to have more and more players kind of either go through pain or go away, or they're going to have to shift their product strategy. Like, for example, General Motors, They've got a lot of unsold cars. They're realizing they have too much EV in their product mix. So on their earnings call, I'd say about a month and a half ago, I believe, Mary Barra, she even admitted, we're going to rush some plug-in hybrids and hybrids for the market to change the product mix because they think they're too far ahead in terms of having EV. Porsche kind of the same thing with the Macan EV. You guys know I'm a Porsche guy. If you go to most Porsche dealers, you can get an allocation on a Macan EV pretty easily. Normally, even like Macans and Cayennes, when new ones come out, you have to wait. That's kind of the first time we're seeing that here. Anyway, I've thrown a lot at you because there was a lot of learning on this trip, more than just driving a Genesis, a Mustang, and then another Genesis, and then doing some things in Arizona I can't tell you about. So this is the point of the episode. I turn around to you guys. I shared some trends with you. What's your take? What am I missing? Or what am I spot on? Or what do you think you can add to the conversation? Let us know in the comments below, or via our social media, MotoManTV, all one word, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And with that, if you found this discussion fascinating, highly suggest you check out our members-only episodes, where I talk to other folks that kind of do what I do, as well as people in the industry, like product managers, people who do product planning, as well as folks like TFL and Savage Geese. You can see that playlist here. Until see you in the next episode, bis später.